This is the Detour Reef. It was built in 1931. When you go past this passage north, you go up to Sault Ste. Marie. When they're headed south, this is the turning point for whether they're going to go south to Detroit or west over into Lake Michigan. And the name Detour in French means turn, so this is the turning point. We have chosen to go west, and we don't see anything out to the west. It's a little bit hazy today. We are going to try and make Mackinaw City tonight. All right, one of my favorite things to do. We've got the spinnaker up, moving along nice. Headed out toward the Martin Reef. There's a lighthouse on there. We're doing good. We have 4.5 knots of speed. We're showing about 4 knots of wind, so we're going faster than the wind, and it's actually pulling it forward. If I put it on the apparent wind, it's pulling it forward to about a 60-degree angle, so that the boat thinks the wind's coming from in front of the boat, which makes it better apparent wind to set the sail for. Having a good sail. We're sailing the spinnaker past Martin's Reef. It's Martin Reef Lighthouse. They built that in 1927 after the reef sank a few ships. It's about 3 feet deep where they built the lighthouse. They stationed a light ship nearby after it sunk the ships, and then when the ship was getting old and needed to be rebuilt or replaced, it was $200,000 to replace the light ship, and somebody came up with the idea of building a lighthouse here for only $100,000, and I think it's been there ever since. And I believe that they gave it away to somebody, so it still has a light on board, but they don't have a lighthouse keeper. It belongs to someone else. This is the Joseph Block. We're crossing paths with him out in the middle of Lake Huron. We're lucky enough to be sailing past Mackinaw Island. Originally it was established with a fort, and later on they built the Grand Hotel in 1887, and people came by steamer and trains to be able to enjoy the island. Today it's very touristy. It has no cars, only horse-drawn carriages and bicycles, and a lot of different shops. Very popular to come here and ride your bike around the island or take a horse-drawn carriage around the island. Here's a closer view of the fort. It's a little bit hazy today, so we'll see how good that shows up. This is the old Round Island Point Lighthouse, marking passage between Mackinaw Island and Round Island. It's quite a narrow passageway, and the freighters pass through here. Here's a better view of the Grand Hotel, built back in 1887. Sailing past Major Shoal. One of the many ferry boats that run people back and forth to the island. This is the car ferry terminal that my mom and dad used to come up here and wait for the ferry to take them across the straits before the Mackinaw Bridge was built. The bridge was built in 1955. And a lot of the commerce went away because they had car ferry people that would spend money here and the bridge workers would spend money here. But after the bridge was built, they'd bypass this. But now it's getting better because the tourists are providing the money. Here are the different ferries that used to cross. Cars lined up to cross the straits on the ferry. Hunting season was very popular to come up and go across into the Upper Peninsula. This is the icebreaker Mackinaw. It's 290 feet long and it was built back during World War II. It was used to keep the shipping lanes open in the Great Lakes so that the freighters could supply iron ore down to the steel mills to keep the war effort going. It's since been retired and is now a museum. It's a great tour. We just left Mackinaw City and we're about to go under the Mackinaw Bridge. The bridge is 5 miles long. Was opened in 1955. We are currently sailing under the Mackinaw Bridge at about 10 knots of wind. Fine sail. The scary part is it doesn't look high enough, but it is. Quite the bridge. When she was built, she was the longest suspension bridge in the world. The Mighty Mac. Sailing past Gray's Reef Lighthouse. It's now abandoned. It was built back in 1937. In 1965, there were 4 lighthouse keepers at the lighthouse when a ship crashed into the lighthouse. It was able to back off. The ship hit it because of dense fog. It was taking on water. It made it to Mackinaw City before it sunk. In 1976, the lighthouse keepers were taken off and it was shut down, and now it's abandoned and in poor condition. It was the last operating lighthouse in northern Lake Michigan. When we sailed under the Mackinaw Bridge, we went through the Straits of Mackinaw, which divides Lake Huron from Lake Michigan. So we sailed from Lake Huron to Lake Michigan. We're at Charlevoix and the bridge is going up. We're going to go into Round Lake. I gotta go back to work. Here we go. We're in Charlevoix, where the deer are pretty tame.
There's 2 babies, mommy and 2 babies.
Yep. Well, they still have their spots. ran out of propane last night, so I borrowed a bicycle and rode out, had the propane tank filled. But turns out it was a 6-mile ride. I thought it was only going to be a 2-mile ride, but that place wouldn't fill the tank. They only exchanged tanks. So I had to ride further than I thought. But it's all good now. We've got a full tank of propane on board to do our cooking with. Charlevoix is such a beautiful place. That's Nemesis. We're at the dock at Charlevoix. This is Round Lake. Some of the houses on Round Lake are amazing. That house was owned by the people that have the boat company, Four Winds. It was up for sale for $8 million last time we were here. That's a nice size rainbow. Blowing in the 20s to 30s out there today in the direction that we want to go, so we stayed in the harbor. But we did go down to the beach because in Petoskey you can find Petoskey stones, and that's what we're looking for. So that's a Petoskey stone. Put it in the light. This is one of the mushroom houses of Charlevoix. It was designed by Earl Young, and he tried to design buildings that fit the landscape, and so this is what he came up with. It's blowing 20 to 25 out in Lake Michigan in the direction that we want to go, so we'd have to go upwind. We don't want to do that. So we have gone out into Lake Charlevoix, and we can sail to Horton Bay. It's one of the hangouts where Ernest Hemingway spent some of his time. And then tomorrow we are looking for winds to blow out of the south so that we'll have an easy sail to go north out in Lake Michigan. So we walked up to the Horton Bay General Store where Hemingway used to come up to and hang out, talk to people, and drink his whiskey. Next door is the Red Fox Inn. They've owned it since 1910. So from the store you come down this road and it opens up into the bay, and there's a few sailboats that are moored out there. Nemesis is anchored out there, and there's Nemesis out there. We left Charlevoix this morning, made it through the 930 bridge, got out here in the lake headed for Beaver Island. It's been pretty sporty. I haven't been able to video much of it because the waves are big enough that auto doesn't do a good job. We're getting toward Beaver, so it's letting up a little bit, but I still have to hand steer. I was blowing 15 to 17 knots most of the time, true wind, with a max of 23 knots, and we were sailing quite fast. Alright, we're in the lee of Beaver Island, sorta. Still blowing 18. The big waves are not as bad. And we're almost there. Here we are in St. James Harbor, Beaver Island. Our maximum wind speed, true wind speed, was 29.6 on the way over. And as we sailed, I was seeing up in the 9-knot range, which this is a displacement boat, and so it only supposed to go about 7.5, 8 knots. But when you get on a wave and you're surfing down, it'll do better. So we are seeing some 9s. We are on Beaver Island in St. James Harbor. It's got a lot of character. I assume it was named after Strang, James Strang. He was a Mormon, came and settled the island, ended up with about 2,500 people here. He eventually declared himself king and tried to succeed from the United States. Some of his followers didn't like his rules, and so 2 of them shot him, and it took Strang about 3 weeks to die from his wounds. They jumped on the steamer Michigan, went back to Mackinaw, and the sheriff met him at the dock and took him over to the bar and bought him a beer.